The millionaire didn't lock the safe on purpose. Jacob Whitmore wasn't just rich. He was strategically rich. Everything he owned, from the 20-car garage to the Italian marble floors in his 12-bedroom Atlanta mansion, had been earned, not inherited. Every dollar he made came from shrewd real estate deals, cold calls, and risky bets that paid off. He knew how to grow money. He knew how to protect it. And more importantly, he knew how easily it could all disappear with one wrong decision or one disloyal person. That's why Jacob had trust issues. He trusted very few people, his lawyer, his accountant, and maybe his barber. But when it came to household staff, even those who had worked for him for years, he kept a watchful eye. It wasn't paranoia, he told himself. It was preparedness. One of those staff members was Maya Harris, his full-time live-in maid. Maya was in her early 30s, a single mother raising a teenage son. She had been with Jacob for over 3 years. She was polite, always professional, and never gave him a single reason to doubt her. She didn't ask personal questions. She didn't snoop, and she never showed any interest in Jacob's wealth. But that's exactly what made Jacob suspicious. People are good until they're given the opportunity not to be, he often said. Over the past few months, crime had crept closer to his neighborhood. Several luxury homes nearby were robbed, some by strangers, others in coordinated inside jobs. Maids, gardeners, even drivers have been caught stealing jewelry and leaking alarm codes. Jacob started wondering, could Maya be tempted too? So he devised a plan. It was a sunny Friday morning in August when Jacob left for a supposed business trip in Miami. But this wasn't just another real estate conference. It was a setup, a carefully crafted test. Before leaving, he walked into his private study, the one room Maya rarely touched except to dust the furniture. Behind a large abstract painting was a biometric safe, normally kept locked at all times. It contained over $200,000 in neatly stacked $100 bills, his limited edition Rolex collection, several family heirloom rings, and one diamond bracelet gifted by a client worth more than some people's homes. Normally, the safe stayed locked, out of sight and out of reach. But today, Jacob left it wide open. He didn't just crack the door. He pulled it fully open so the contents were clearly visible. If Maya so much as dusted the shelf, she'd see it. If she had even the slightest temptation, she'd have every chance to act on it. To make things even more compelling, he left a small envelope on the desk nearby, filled with another $5,000 in loose cash, unguarded and easy to grab. He tilted the painting just enough, so it looked like it was accidentally bumped. Anyone curious would peek behind it without suspicion. Then came the final step, activating the hidden camera. Unbeknownst to Maya or anyone, Jacob had installed a discreet camera inside the air vent, pointed directly at the safe. It was motion-triggered and streamed live to his phone. With it, he could watch everything that happened inside the study from anywhere in the world. Satisfied, Jacob took one last look at the setup. Everything appeared normal. Nothing looked staged. He grabbed his suitcase, got into his black Range Rover, and drove off down the long gated driveway. As he merged onto the highway, his phone buzzed. A notification from the camera. Motion detected. Study room. She was there. Maya had arrived. Right on time. 8 a.m. sharp. As always, she entered through the back door, tied her apron, and began her routine like clockwork. First the kitchen, then the dining area, and eventually the study. Jacob watched from his hotel room in Miami, eyes glued to the screen. His heart beat faster, not from fear, but from anticipation. Would she see the money? Would she peek inside the safe? Would she take something? He leaned forward, waiting for Maya to reach that crucial moment. What happened next would leave him speechless. Maya arrived at 8 a.m. sharp, as she always did. Rain or shine, she was consistent. Something Jacob had silently admired about her, even if he didn't say it. She walked up the long driveway carrying her usual gray cleaning cart, dressed in her familiar uniform, hair neatly pulled back in a bun, a soft smile on her face despite the heavy Atlanta heat. To anyone passing by, she looked like just another maid. But to Maya, this job wasn't just a paycheck. It was survival. It was hope. It was her way of making sure her 14-year-old son, Jalen, had food on the table and a future beyond the cycle she'd grown up in. She entered through the back door with her spare key, removed her shoes at the threshold, and took a deep breath as the cold air of the marble-floored mansion brushed against her face. Routine kicked in. Kitchen first, then dining room. Vacuum the hall rugs. Empty the trash. Polish the wood. Then the study. The study. That's where everything would change. As Maya pushed the cart down the hall, humming faintly to herself, she opened the heavy oak door to the study. She'd cleaned it dozens, maybe hundreds of times before. It always smelled faintly of cologne and expensive leather. Books lined the walls. A globe sat in the corner, and the large walnut desk was usually clean except for a notepad and a crystal pen holder. But today, something felt off. She walked in, glanced around casually, and then stopped. The painting. It was crooked. That painting had never been crooked. Jacob was too precise for that. Curious, she reached out to adjust it. And that's when she saw it. Behind the frame, the safe door was wide open, fully, unmistakably open. She froze. Her first instinct was fear. Her heart leapt into her throat. Had there been a break-in? Was someone else in the house? She looked around quickly. Silence. No one. The house was empty. At least it seemed that way. Then her eyes shifted to the safe's contents. Her breath caught. Bundles of crisp $100 bills, neatly stacked and banded. Rows of jewelry. Sparkling watches, diamond rings, gold chains. Each one likely worth more than she made in a year. Maybe several years. For a long moment, she just stared. Her fingers tightened around the handle of the cleaning cart. She stepped closer. The light from the chandelier above made the diamonds sparkle even more. They looked like they were glowing, like they were calling to her. Just one ring. A voice whispered in her mind. He'd never notice. One stack of bills. That could cover rent for a whole year. She stood there for what felt like forever. No cameras. No alarms. No witnesses. Just her and a mountain of money. No one would know. She could take a piece. Just one. Slip it into her pocket. Clean up the room and leave like nothing happened. No one would ever suspect her. Jacob was out of town. She was alone. But then another thought surfaced. Jalen. Her son's face appeared in her mind. His wide smile when she surprised him with a used bike for his birthday. The pride in his eyes when he got A B+ on a math test. The tears he cried when his friend's mom got arrested for theft. Maya felt a lump in her throat. She had worked too hard to build a life of dignity. For herself, for her son. To throw it away in a moment of weakness. That wasn't who she was. That wasn't who she wanted her son to become. She stepped back, shaking her head as if physically pushing away the temptation. And then she did something completely unexpected. She pulled out her phone and called Jacob. "Mr. Whitmore?" she said cautiously when he answered. "I just walked into your study. I think you might have forgotten to lock your safe. It's wide open." On the other end of the call, Jacob, watching everything unfold through the hidden camera, sat frozen, speechless. This wasn't what he expected. He had spent days planning this. He wanted to see what Maya would do when no one was watching. And now, here she was, not stealing, not hesitating, not even touching a single item, but calling him. "Ah, yes, Maya. Thank you," he replied, trying to steady his voice. "Please, go ahead and close it. I'll handle it when I'm back." "Of course, sir," she said, calm and composed. "I just wanted to make sure everything was safe." She hung up, gently closed the heavy safe door, locked it, adjusted the painting back into place, and quietly continued cleaning, like nothing ever happened. Jacob continued watching, still stunned. The test had ended, and the results left him more shaken than he ever imagined. Maya didn't touch a single dollar. Not one ring, not one watch, not even a single glance back at the fortune staring her in the face. Instead, she stepped back, exhaled slowly, and left the study with the same calm she had walked in with. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She didn't act suspicious. She simply walked to the kitchen, dried her hands, pulled out her phone from her bag on the counter, and made a call that would change everything. Jacob's phone rang in his Miami hotel room. At first, he didn't recognize the number. Maya rarely called him directly, but when he answered and heard her soft, calm voice, his eyebrows rose in surprise. "Mr. Whitmore, I just walked into your study," Maya began, sounding hesitant, respectful. "I found the safe open. It looks like you may have forgotten to lock it before you left. Should I close it for you?" Jacob's jaw tensed. This was the moment he hadn't prepared for. He had expected a long pause, maybe some pacing, perhaps even the sound of jewelry quietly slipping into an apron pocket. But not this, not integrity, not directness. For a few seconds, he didn't respond. He sat on the edge of the hotel bed, eyes fixed on his phone screen where the live security feed still streamed Maya's every move. She wasn't fidgeting. She wasn't looking around nervously. She simply stood still, phone in hand, waiting for direction. "Yes, Maya," he said finally, collecting himself. "Please, go ahead and lock it. And let's keep this between us. I'll handle it when I'm back." "Understood, sir," she replied politely. "Just wanted to make sure everything stays safe." Click. The line went dead. Jacob leaned back in his chair, his mind reeling. Back in the study, Maya hung up and walked back to the open safe. She took one last glance, not out of desire, but responsibility, then gently swung the door shut. With a quiet clunk, it locked into place. She reached behind the frame, fixed the painting until it sat straight again, then dusted the edges and returned to her work. She didn't stop to process what just happened. She didn't shake her head or mumble to herself. She didn't check the mirror or act like a hero in a movie. She just kept going, vacuumed the rug, wiped down the glass coffee table, watered the plant by the window, moved on to the next room. To her, it was just another Tuesday morning. But to Jacob, it was a turning point. He watched the security feed for another 20 minutes. Maya never went back into the study. She never spoke to anyone about it. She simply finished her tasks with the same quiet, dependable rhythm she always had. That afternoon, as he sat on a rooftop in Miami during a business lunch, Jacob barely heard a word anyone said. His mind kept replaying the footage in his head. Maya discovering the safe. Maya calling him. Maya walking away. What kind of person does that? He wondered. Not just a good employee. Not just a loyal maid. But someone rare. Someone built with unshakable integrity. Jacob thought back to all the stories he'd read in the news about nannies stealing, assistants leaking info, drivers blackmailing employers. The world had made him believe that no one was trustworthy, that people always broke under pressure. But now he knew, not everyone. Maya didn't fail the test. She didn't even flinch. Later that night, Jacob rewatched the security footage, pausing it over and over again, tried to understand what made her so different. Why didn't she take anything? Why didn't she even hesitate? She had every opportunity, every excuse. Single mother, working class, no one watching. And yet, she did exactly what was right. Without fanfare, he thought about her son. He didn't know much about the boy, only that Maya worked extra hours to pay for his school supplies and tutoring. Jacob suddenly felt a pang of guilt. This woman had been working in his house for years, and he never once asked how she was doing. She never asked for raises, never took sick days unless absolutely necessary. She just showed up, did her job, and went home. And here he was testing her like she was a threat. For the first time in years, Jacob Whitmore felt ashamed of himself. Maya had passed the test. But what Jacob realized in that hotel room was far more powerful than anything money could have revealed. He had underestimated her character. And now, he knew he had to make it right. What began as a trap had become a revelation. When Jacob returned home late Sunday night, he didn't head straight to bed like usual. He went into the study, locked the safe, and then he just sat there, alone in silence. He had already watched the footage of Maya's reaction at least 10 times during the trip. Every time, it left him feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time. Not just surprise, but shame. He'd built his fortune on strategy and skepticism, always believing people were motivated by self-interest. And here was a woman, surrounded by unimaginable temptation, who didn't even blink. He was the one who failed the test, not her. That night, Jacob couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned, his mind replaying Maya's calm voice on the phone. I just wanted to make sure everything stays safe. Those words echoed louder than any business deal he'd ever closed. The next morning, he was up early, unshaven, still wearing his robe. He sat in the grand living room, waiting, at 8:02 a.m., right on schedule. He heard the familiar creak of the back door opening. Maya was here. She went straight to work, just like always. No change in behavior, no shift in tone. To her, it was just another Monday. To Jacob, it was a day he knew he had to face what he'd done. He pressed the intercom button gently. Maya, could you come to the living room for a moment, please? There was a pause. Yes, Mr. Whitmore, came her reply. She entered the room a few moments later, holding a cleaning rag in one hand and a bottle of surface spray in the other. Her expression was neutral, slightly puzzled but not nervous. She stood near the edge of the room, unsure why she was being called. Jacob looked up at her and smiled. But this time, it wasn't his usual polite or rehearsed smile. This one was genuine, vulnerable, even. Maya, he began, voice softer than usual, I owe you an apology and some truth. She tilted her head, listening, but said nothing. Jacob took a deep breath and began explaining everything. The test, the open safe, the tilted painting, the hidden camera in the air vent, his doubts, his suspicions, the entire setup. As he spoke, Maya's expression shifted, not to anger, but to something much more painful, disappointment. She stood still, silent for a few seconds after he finished. Then she finally spoke, softly, yet with unmistakable emotion. I've been working here for over 3 years, she said. I've cleaned every inch of this house. I've locked the doors, watched for packages when you were away, cared for this place like it was my own. I never thought I needed to prove my honesty. Her words weren't sharp. They weren't loud, but they cut deeper than anything Jacob had heard in years. She didn't accuse him. She didn't shout. She just told the truth, and the truth hurt more than any theft ever could. Jacob looked down, guilt washing over him like a wave. You're right, he said quietly. You didn't deserve that, and I see that now. That's why I want to make it up to you. Maya raised an eyebrow, unsure what that meant. Jacob stood, walked over to the cabinet by the fireplace, and pulled out a white envelope. He handed it to her. She opened it slowly. Inside was a check for $50,000. Her eyes widened. For the first time that morning, she looked genuinely shocked. Mr. Whitmore, I can't accept this, she said, stepping back slightly. Yes, you can, Jacob insisted. That money was meant to test your character. But you already showed me something far more valuable. You showed me integrity, something that's worth more than all the cash in that safe. And that's something I can't ignore. Maya hesitated. You don't owe me anything, she said. Jacob nodded. Maybe not, but I want to invest in people who deserve it. You passed the test. I didn't even have the right to give you. Let this be the beginning of something better, for you and for Jalen. At the sound of her son's name, Maya's lips parted slightly in surprise. You know his name? Of course, Jacob said. I know more than I let on. I know you've been giving everything you have to build a future for him. And now, I'd like to help make that future a little easier. For the first time in their years working together, Maya smiled, genuinely warmly, not out of obligation, not out of politeness, but out of gratitude. She tucked the envelope away quietly, nodded and said, Thank you, Mr. Whitmore, not just for the money, but for seeing me. Jacob smiled back, knowing full well that he was finally seeing clearly, for the first time in a long time. Let me know when you're ready for Section 5, the reward, and I'll deliver the final part of the story with a powerful conclusion. Jacob reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small white envelope. No fancy wrapping, no dramatic presentation, just an envelope, simple and quiet like the moment itself. He handed it to Maya. She opened it slowly, unsure of what to expect. Inside was a check for $50,000. Her breath caught in her throat. I can't accept this, she whispered, staring at the number like it might vanish if she blinked. Jacob stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. "Yes, you can," he said, "because in a world full of people chasing shortcuts, you showed me what real integrity looks like. That kind of honesty, it's priceless, and it deserves to be recognized. I don't just want to reward you, I want to help you." Maya stood there, frozen. This wasn't just a gift. It was validation. It was opportunity. It was a door she never imagined someone like her would get to walk through. In the days that followed, Maya took time to process it all. She didn't rush out to buy a car or take a vacation. That wasn't her style. She sat with her son, Jalen, and had a long talk. She told him the truth about the test, the safe, the check, and about the idea that had been quietly living in her heart for years. Starting her own cleaning company. For so long, it had just been a dream. Something she daydreamed about while scrubbing floors or folding sheets. Maybe someday, idea she never thought she'd actually be able to act on. But now, she had the means. And more importantly, she had support. Jacob didn't just hand her money and walk away. He offered to help guide her, just like any investor would. He introduced her to a local business mentor, an old friend of his who specialized in helping first-time entrepreneurs. He covered the cost of a 12-week business development program at a respected community college. Maya took every class seriously. She showed up early, stayed late, took notes, asked questions. She wasn't just dreaming anymore. She was building. 3 months later, Harris Home Care launched with just one client, Jacob Whitmore. He insisted on being her first customer, paying her top rate, and letting her use his glowing recommendation to promote her services. Within weeks, she had 5 regular clients. Within 3 months, she hired her first employee. By the end of the year, Maya was managing a small team of 5 women. Each one hired carefully, each one trained with the same attention to detail and pride Maya had always brought to the job. She created a workplace that respected dignity, paid fairly, and offered flexible hours for single parents. She was no longer just the maid. She was a CEO, still humble, still hardworking, but now empowered, independent, and in control of her future. Jacob watched the entire transformation with quiet pride. He'd spent most of his life measuring people by contracts, numbers, and performance. But Maya had reminded him of something he'd forgotten. Character matters more than credentials. In helping her rise, he discovered something money couldn't buy. Trust. And not just trust in Maya. Trust that goodness still existed. That integrity hadn't vanished. That people, when given a chance, could rise far beyond the boxes society puts them in. 1 year later, Jacob hosted a small holiday gathering at his home. Just a few friends, some colleagues, and of course, Harris Home Care staff, now wearing crisp new uniforms with the company logo stitched proudly on the chest. Maya stood near the kitchen, clipboard in hand, directing her team with quiet confidence. Jacob raised his glass and tapped it gently for attention. "A year ago," he said, "I made a mistake. I tested someone who never should have been doubted. And in doing so, I met the most trustworthy person I've ever known." Maya Harris didn't just pass the test. She turned it into a triumph. And now, she's not just keeping homes clean. She's building a legacy. The room erupted in applause. Maya, holding back tears, smiled wide. This wasn't luck. It wasn't charity. It was earned through grace, through patience, through integrity. In a world full of shortcuts, Maya chose a high road, and it led her somewhere amazing. She turned a test into a turning point, a job into a company, and a challenge into a legacy. Because sometimes the greatest riches are in the values you refuse to compromise.